Hello.
Hi, we are Doctors Jennifer and Jake Dean Hill, and this is the Doctors J&J podcast. We are so excited to be here with you today. We are both licensed therapists. We work together, we live together, we lead together, so we understand the challenges of being able to work peacefully and harmoniously together. We have come up with a simple, concrete solution. It's called Wear Two Crowns.
Wear Two Crowns is all about equity, learning how to bring out the strengths in each other, and learning how to share the power in the relationship so that we can all be better together. Each week, we're going to give you tips and tools and strategies and even personal stories to help you wear two crowns. And we're going to invite experts in the field of relationships that will help to educate us, inspire us to wear two crowns as well.
Yes. So tune in each week. We look forward to our time together.
Hello and welcome back to the Doctors J&J podcast.
Hello, it's good to see everybody today virtually. I am so excited about our guest today.
Oh, so am I. We
She's
have
amazing.
a special guest,
Yes.
and I can't wait to introduce her. We have the privilege of having Dr. Cynthia Bentzen-Mercer with us today. She is a globally recognized human capital strategist. She is a board-certified executive coach and a USA Today best-selling author, known for helping high-performing leaders stop drifting and reclaim clarity, alignment, and meaningful momentum. She has more than 30 years of executive and advisory experience. She brings a rare blend of strategic rigor, behavioral science, and real-world leadership insight. Her work challenges us to not overlook the risks of leadership and relationships, which is drift, the slow incremental deviation from what matters most. She holds a PhD in social psychology and an MBA, and she is the best-selling author of Human Capital Investment Strategy, Now, Near, Next, and the Intentional Allyship Companion Guide. She also has her own well-known podcast called Climbing the Corporate Ladder Without Breaking a Heel. I love that title. And we have had the privilege of being a guest on that show. And now we are blessed to have her as a guest with us. Welcome.
Welcome, Dr. Cynthia. We're going to just call you Cynthia. We'll drop our titles, just call each other first names here, but also want to recognize your title. Well-deserved, well-earned. You have such a background of experience and knowledge, but what was striking to me, and if you could speak to this, and this is going to be helpful to our listeners, you're very knowledgeable in the corporate world, but you took kind of a shift more into it. From my perspective, it looks like more into the human capital. Can you speak to that a little bit? The relationships with people?
Yeah, first of all, thank you all for having me. I'm so excited to be with you and with your listeners. Big fan of the work that you all do and learned a lot having you on my show. So it's exciting to reciprocate and have the opportunity to be here. I think that early on in my career, I really cut my teeth and grew up sort of accidentally in human resources. But I always felt like I was a business person first. I fell in love with business. But I learned early on, as you guys can appreciate, that you don't accomplish anything in business without human beings. And human beings that voluntarily bring their human capital, not voluntarily in that they're not getting paid for it, but voluntarily choose to bring their skills, knowledge, experiences, and natural God-given gifts and talents to your organization. And it's through that organizations flourish. And so for me, it was really a strategic element of for companies to flourish, they really need this gift of this human capital. And for individuals to flourish, they really need to understand their human capital and the value and worth of that that they're contributing. And so it started less altruistic and more just, it made sense to me from a business perspective. Like, both sides of this equation really need to get this
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's a win-win when we all understand what we're bringing to the equation.
So
we
true.
completely resonate with that. We say if relationships don't work in the home, then the marriage doesn't work or the family doesn't work, right? And if they don't work in the boardroom or in corporate settings, the business doesn't work. So you're speaking our language on that. It really does come down to good morale. I love the word ethos. You speak to that in your book too, and making sure you protect and develop the ethos of an organization. You have a 6-stage model. I know we don't have time to go through all of those, but I thought that was a really profound model about the risk assessment, all these different things that you do to be making sure that you develop that human capital. Anything you want to say to that at all?
Mm. Yeah. So for me, it was, I had spent so much time with my thought partner on Now Near Next, really focusing on women, studying women, right?
Yeah.
We're best served to, we're best poised to serve the person we once were, and I still am. But I spent 30 plus years in corporate as a female executive. So that was a really natural place to start. But what I wanted to reach were the, respectfully, majority, which are middle-aged white men who are penning the check.
Yeah.
And recognizing, right, all due respect, Dr. Jake, recognizing that, knew that I needed to come, I needed to come from a business perspective. And for me, it was a financial model. So when I started to think about, we don't think twice about investing in bricks and mortar in this day and age, in technology, in AI, all the things to create efficiencies. But the minute that we start talking about executive coaching, or we start talking about investing in human beings, right? Suddenly, that's the part of the budget I found for years. The training and development budget is what gets left on the cutting room floor because it was the softer investment. And so when I began to think about human capital from an investment strategy, what resonated for me as a business person that I thought would resonate for other business people is, how do we take the same rigor that we would apply to our financial assets and apply that to our human capital assets? So we wouldn't put our hard-earned money or our hard-earned revenue dollars into investments that we weren't monitoring, that we weren't assessing the risk of that portfolio. We wouldn't put all of our dollars into one fund, right? That would not be terribly smart, because the markets can be volatile, et cetera. We're really careful about diversification, and we're careful about, do we have an area of risk? How do we think about that from the human capital perspective is, are we spending all of our time and resources in one category? Have we thought about the aging of our population? Have we thought about how diverse is the thought leadership that we're bringing into the organization? Are we rolling the dice more on skill and knowledge? Or are we considering, like baseball does and any really great sports team does, right? They're looking at raw talent. What is their pitch speed? What is their
Right.
swing speed, right? They're looking at things that, how do we equate that then into the business world? And so for me, the 6 steps were really to say, what if we applied that same rigor to how we are building talent in our organization, and invested with that same level of discipline? I believe, and I think the data will show, and I won't get super geeked out on the data. You can read or listen to the book for that, but I know you guys appreciate the data and the evidence, is that companies, particularly in this age of AI, will thrive and will be resilient and will, meet the needs of those that they serve if they spent a fraction of the time and energy focusing on investing in the human beings that they do on bricks and mortar and technology and et cetera.
I couldn't agree more.
Agreed. I could not agree more.
Well,
Brilliantly said.
and I think about how a lot of our listeners, being often couples, one of the things we say a lot is how important it is to invest in the relationship. And sometimes we see couples a lot of times investing in so many other things. Like, I think of a lot of, we talk about sometimes people who stay home and they're managing the home. They're the CEO of their home organization. But sometimes when all of the focus is on the home and the structure and remodeling or doing things that are more tangible, and they neglect the relationship, whether it be with their kids, whether it be with their spouse, their overall organization as a family falters. And I feel like that so much applies to just understanding how important that the human capital is, and that investment is so important. And one of the things I thought too was your concept on drift is fascinating to me. And I would love you to talk more about how you came to that conclusion as that being such an important thing in organizations, and how you think that applies to relationships.
And specifically men and women. You
Yes.
spoke to the differences of how women will drift in one way, excuse me, and men will drift in another way.
Yeah, I think that's where our thought leadership so comes together, where the important work that you all are doing and the work that I am doing really start to gel. So it was a very personal awakening. And that is when Kimberly and I wrote Now Near Next, we researched women around the globe. And I'm going to start with this as a backdrop because it leads to answering your question and how this all kind of came to be. But we researched women around the globe, and what we found universally, 5 race ethnicities, 4 countries, a 20-year age span, all high-performing, ambitious professional women. And what we found was that these women and women at large are not intentional in their careers. They grow restless, they grow stuck, stagnant, pick the word. We use the word restless at some point along their career journey. And for me, it happened many times, right? And so we really focused in my first book on Now Near Next was bringing intentionality to our careers, to our professions as women. And then that led to I feel like I need to really address the other side of that coin, which is how can organizations be more intentional in how they're building portfolios of human capital? Here was the epiphany for me. I suddenly was looking at my own life and thinking, you know what? People are not always intentional beyond their careers. That sometimes we're really intentional in our careers. So I was kind of an outlier. There were a handful of women that we studied that were outliers that were like, I was really intentional with my career. Where I wasn't as intentional is in my relationships. So what started to develop for me was, what's another word for intention? And where does that follow in other areas of our life beyond our work? And for me, it was drift. This sort of big moment happened when I'm like, you know what? We drift. I live on a lake, and so I think the words came to me both through the divine as well as the reality of watching logs floating down without intention, completely subject to the wind, the current, the environment, right? And that is when it started to come to me that in our physiological health, right? Our mental and physical health, in our prosperity, however we think about that, financial well-being, in our sense of purpose, in our potential, which is largely around our work, whether that's in the home or outside the home, and then our people. And I realize that drift happens when we are over indexing in one or more other areas of our life. And for me, because I wasn't happy, satisfied, fulfilled in the people element, and for a while that was a 20-year marriage. And after that, it was a toxic relationship. I over indexed in my potential. I threw everything into building my career. I got a doctorate because that was someplace I could fulfill something that I needed because I was avoiding other things. And I think that that's where our thought leadership really starts to gel, is that you have to be intentional. If you let your relationships drift, they're eventually going to hit the rocks.
Another businesswoman, I mean, I think we both can speak to just that the gender gap that happens in work and some of the frustrations with that. You will not be offending Jake on any of this because he did his whole dissertation on this and is recognized. I know he's just a real
I know, I love
champion.
it.
I know he's just a real champion for equity, really. So it's like what is
Right.
quickly and easily given to him needs to be given to women, and then what is men's responsibility in helping to close that gap. And sometimes it's a demotion, sometimes it's a making space for the woman, sometimes it's deferring, sometimes it's a variety of things. But I think that piece,
Mhm.
can we imagine a world where we just had that value for equity, whether it's in the relationships or in the workplace? I just love
Yeah.
so much of what you said about just women and your work on that. Did you want to say something?
Well, I just think too, what I thought of is how you're like, I need to go after the men in leadership, which
Yeah.
is exactly what I did with my dissertation research,
Yeah.
is saying we need to focus on the people at the top who have power to change the culture.
Mhm.
And I think your term of being intentional is so powerful, because if we're not intentional about how we treat each other, if men aren't intentional about, making sure that they are practicing equality, or what we call having a peer marriage,
Mhm.
and a peer relationship, it doesn't just happen by itself. Like I said, if we just are drifting, the relationship goes who knows where.
Yeah, I think that was really profound insight on your part to recognize that really you said indexing, overcompensating, overfunctioning, but just really distracting yourself, weren't you, from the relational
Yes.
dysfunction that was happening in front, and throwing yourself into the corporate world. What was the catalyst or the light bulb that said, wait a minute, this is a toxic relationship, or I need to align the two? What was that for you? Do you remember?
Yeah, I think so. It's interesting. And hindsight's a beautiful thing, isn't it? It's, we can all Monday morning quarterback our own lives.
Yeah.
Um, so a lot of this is hindsight. If I'm,
Right.
Jake and Jen, it wasn't like in the moment I went, oh, I have this,
Mhm.
epiphany of what's happening in my
Yeah.
world. It's like I can look back now and go, oh, that was drift. And I define drift. I believe that the taxonomy of drift happens in three ways. And it can happen simultaneously, and you can be drifting in any one of the five areas differently. One is that we have avoid, right? So we see clearly that something is off. It could be the toxic boss and we don't like our job. It could be that our finances are really struggling. It could be that every time I put these pants on, they feel a little tighter and
Yeah.
maybe I'm drifting and that I'm not taking as good care of myself physically. It could be that I'm sleeping more, I have more headaches because I'm not, my mental health. So it's, we see it, it's very clear, and we're just simply avoiding and throwing ourselves into something else and justifying our busyness. It could be that it's incremental. It's something happens and we notice it and we address it, and then we sort of go, okay, that's dealt with, and we move on. And then another new thing happens and we address it, or we think we do, and then we sort of move on. And we never take the time to pull up 50,000 feet and go, there's a pattern here, right?
Yeah.
There's a pattern in this relationship that isn't healthy. There's a pattern in my mental, physical health that isn't healthy, et cetera, my work life. And the other is just, it's that it sort of happens just with complacency. We're just going about our business, and we're sort of not paying attention, and our life is on rinse and repeat. And so, for that reason, and then suddenly we hit this crashing moment. I think for me, I've experienced all of those.
Yeah.
Relationally, in my 20-year marriage, it was definitely incremental. It was thing after thing after thing after thing. And it wasn't until I started journaling, because you start to feel like, why am I so unhappy? Why is this not working for me? And it wasn't until I started journaling the things that were making me unhappy, and I could start to see the totality of those things. Unfortunately, probably too late, right? A lot of
Yeah.
resentment had built up, a lot of, we had grown really far apart at that point. We were very different people at that point. Later, post my divorce, I was unfortunately in a relationship with somebody who, in hindsight, is borderline personality disorder, is a narcissist. It started out really great, because you don't stay in a relationship
Always
if it
does.
starts crappy, right? So it
Oh,
started out, yeah, started out great. It was like all the things, right? Yeah, and like for a year, I was like, whoo. And then I stuck around a lot longer, and that was avoided. I saw it crystal clear. Like, and it was, I don't know, it was fear, it was trauma, it was all the things, but it was like, that is so difficult and so scary. I'm just going to play nice and throw myself into something that is a nice distraction. But the bottom line is, you don't get those 5 years back. I don't get those 5 years
No,
back.
you don't.
Now
You don't.
I don't live in regret, because I don't believe in that. I've learned, I've grown. That's a long way around for the person listening to say, I'm a big believer that on a daily basis, doing a check-in to say, where do I feel misaligned in those 5 dimensions of human flourishing?
Yeah.
What is the signal that is telling me I'm out of alignment? And our body tells on us first. Lack of sleep, too much sleep, headaches, gut, you name it, right? And is there a pattern here? Is this new? Is this going on? And what's one teeny weeny thing I can do today to pivot in a slightly different direction? I call it the 7-minute pivot. And for me, it's a daily occurrence, because I tend to over index. I tend to get really excited about, oh my gosh, I'm in a new relationship and that's everything. Or I work is on fire and that's my thing, or, whatever it is. Or I started working out again, and so I'm addicted to the gym. I don't do anything small. So that's me. I have to look every single day like, okay, recalibrate, Cynthia.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think the journaling can really, like you said, I'm a big journaler as well. Not everybody is, and it's not how they check in, but especially if you're an
Right.
overachiever or a high achiever, I like that better. You're a high achiever, you need to make sure that you're doing some good self-care. You're checking in with yourself too as a high achieving woman. I love that. I love the 7-minute pivot plan. I was doing that. Jake and I were doing that last night.
Mm.
What do you think makes people abandon themselves?
Yeah. So what's interesting is, first and foremost, I think the person listening needs to hear it's not failure. It's
Mm,
it's the opposite.
yeah.
High achievers, type A, driven people, the people that are listening to your
Yeah.
show, we're not quitters.
Yeah,
We're
that's good.
competitive. We're not
Yeah.
quitters. We
Mm,
right, we want to win, we want to hang in there. We're resilient. We
mhm,
got this. We
mhm,
can work through this. We can take it. And that isn't always the right answer. It's just,
mhm,
muscling through.
mm,
I had sort of a aha moment over in the last several months. I'm a breast cancer survivor. It'll be 18 years in
Mm,
September. So I was
gosh.
diagnosed young. I was spotted when I was 40. It was technically diagnosed when I was 41. So very early
mhm,
onset. And I was in my best health. I was working out. I was physically in my best health. I was always a healthy eater, young, all the things. There's so much more research, which you guys know and appreciate, around stress and what stress
mhm,
will do to our
mhm,
bodies, and the
mhm,
Mm,
erosion that can happen inside of our bodies. And so on the outside, I was killing it. I mean, I had a great title. I was making great money. We had a beautiful home. I have two great, beautiful children. I was married. Everybody thought, my husband was, he was great fun at a party. So everybody loved him, and we are very good friends now. We just ultimately are really great friends. He's married to an incredible woman who is his perfect person.
mhm.
Um, but we were not the best married match.
Yeah.
And so from the outside, everything looked great, but inside,
Mhm,
I was so stressed and so
mhm,
unhappy. And that's that's when you have to. And so yes, we think we have to put up this face, this image, and all the things, which is why I think we avoid doing the important inner work. Um, but the cost is great.
The cost is great. You're right. I was just thinking as you were talking how it takes so much courage and bravery to listen to what is not working and get out of the term we use so much, obviously, in our work is denial, right? Having an awakening. I don't know if men
Yes.
or women are more prone to this. I work a lot with men and women, but I do see this quite a bit with women that they
Hmm.
need to do this awakening process that is, I compare to Sleeping Beauty and waking up. It's very painful.
mm.
Clothes are out of fashion.
Mhm.
Everybody's dead that you knew. You've been asleep for 100 years, right?
Right.
So it's a very uncomfortable, painful process to awaken, but then to get about resetting. So I'm so inspired
Yeah.
by you and what you've accomplished.
It reminded me of something I say to clients all the time is oftentimes we put ourselves on the shelf for the sake of the marriage or for the sake of the
Mm.
kids or for the sake of things, and then we forget what shelf we put ourselves on.
Yeah.
And I see, couples do
Yeah.
that where they put their relationship on the shelf as
Hmm.
they're trying to, manage the rat race. And I think it's so important
Hmm.
to understand, for one, stop and just like your 7-minute pivot, like, okay, what is your body telling you? What checking in with yourself and saying, who am I? Like, what are my desires? What's missing? What, yeah, what are the patterns that I have developed that maybe are not authentic to me?
Hmm.
And I think, man, we could all benefit from just understanding and taking that, even if it's 7 minutes, to stop and go, am I
Hmm.
living my best life? Am I functioning in my flow?
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
So I just think, man, that can be so powerful, but it's so simple. Like I said, it's such a simple concept.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What would you say?
Number one, there's power and clarity. Number two, we know from neuroscience that we start to interrupt that old, antique part of the brain and create that awareness and get out of those reoccurring patterns. The other thing is, when you think about it in terms of just the realities of drift in the literal sense, the longer something goes on in a direction that you're not choosing, the harder it is to get it back on course and the longer it takes, right?
Yeah.
If you've gained 40 pounds, it takes a lot longer to get back to your fighting weight than if you've gained 5 pounds.
Well said.
Just right,
Yeah.
same in your relationship, depending on how long you let that go or the job that you're stuck in or whatever it might be. And so the power of the daily check-in is catch it early so that you can pivot back on course and take more agency and control over what's happening in your life. And don't allow that incremental drift to happen that gets you so far off course. Yeah.
Brilliant. You just answered my question.
Yeah.
That's really good. It's preventative. That's
Oh.
what you're saying, right? Let's be a little bit more preventative.
Yes.
Let's not wait. I always say you don't have to go off the cliff. You can just go off up to the edge and look over. You don't have to hit rock bottom to make
That's right.
changes, right? You can course correct. I call it zigzagging. We can zigzag a little bit, right? But we don't have to experience such a horrible wake up call before we make some changes. That's good.
Yeah, I just want to highlight that for our listeners that the simple act of daily checking in with yourself can be so powerful to prevent drift. And it will guarantee that it's not going to go for 20 years. And it's going to be so much easier to course correct when it's only been a week or a month or, just a short time to say, hey, we got to get back on track. So powerful.
Yeah. You talk too about in your book about some of the gender differences about drifting for men and women. I thought that was fascinating. You want to speak to that at all?
Yeah, and I think this is, again, we talked about this when you guys were on my podcast in terms of sort of where men might be spending their time in terms of indexing. I think you have what is it? We, me. Remind me.
Oh, the wear two crowns or
no, the I matter, you matter, we matter. Yeah.
Yeah. Start with love.
Yeah.
I matter, you matter, we matter, right? Yes.
Yeah. I matter. Yeah.
I matter,
we
you
matter.
We matter. Yeah.
And how some of your experience has been where women versus men and men show up differently, maybe their starting point. So I'm going to talk about it a little bit more from masculine energy and feminine energy, because I would tell you that I think that I probably showed up in my drift more from a masculine energy perspective in my career as the primary provider, et cetera. So when you think about it that way, I think oftentimes what happens in where relationships, bringing it back to kind of the central to y'all's work, where relationships get hung up, is that the masculine energy tends to focus a lot on potential and prosperity. And so those elements of human flourishing, right? That provider, the wanting to, the career growth, the job, my sense of who I am and so on, coming from that, living into your potential and the prosperity. Where a lot of the feminine energy generally tends to be more in that relational arena, in that purpose arena. I worry a lot because women in particular Now I'm going to switch to female, male. Women in particular tend to put the physiological health on the back burner a lot because they're carrying the weight of so much,
Yes.
right? Especially as more
Right.
women are in the workforce. They're still doing the lion's share of the home care, the health care, et cetera. And so it's sort of like, oh, I'll put that mammogram, I'll get to it, right? The kids need to get their shots,
Yeah,
or I'll get
right.
to it, this needs to happen. So at the end of the day, I say that not in any way, shape, or form as an indictment of anyone. And again, we're speaking in generalizations. I think the important thing is the awareness of where do you naturally tend to over-index. When I woke up several months ago and thought, I haven't had a date in 3 years.
Yeah.
How is that possible? I've been on a dating timeout, I guess. I don't know. And of course I justified it. I've moved twice. I launched another book. I blah, blah, blah. But the reality is I had put no intention into that part of my life.
Yeah.
And I'm not getting any younger. And what I like to have, by the way, this is not an invitation for sliding into my DMs. But
We won't put that in the show
I
notes.
actually have met someone recently. Well, yeah, exactly. We'll see where I have actually been seeing somebody recently. We'll see where it goes. But the point is this. I know for me that it is easy for me to put all of my effort and energy into other areas of my life and not be as intentional about the relationship side. So I have had to really create an awareness around that. And here's the really important thing I want to make sure hits. Because Jake, when you were recounting how important it is the daily so you don't get too far off course, here's where it's different and in addition to prayer, meditation, etc., right? So do your thing that you normally do. But it's additional because when you do a 7-minute pivot, when you do that introspection, it isn't just about awareness. It is awareness, the signals, its patterns, and it's choosing one small thing you will do today, not tomorrow, not next week, not when the kids go off to school, not when the spouse gets their perfect job. You're going to do one, you're not going to overhaul your life. You're going to do one small thing. You're going to make that phone call. You're going to invite that friend to coffee. You're going to send that text. You're going to review your resume. You're going to not have wine after dinner tonight. You're going to take a walk, whatever it is. It's one small thing. It's the action that puts you on course, not just the introspection by itself.
Love it.
Cynthia, you have been such a wealth of knowledge, and I was going to ask you what we always say is our crown jewel, but
I think she
you just gave it to our listeners in such a powerful way. And I just want to reiterate that choosing that one action every day that will keep you on track is so powerful.
Run through those 3 questions again and closing for our listeners for the 7-minute pivot. What are those?
Yeah. So it's free on my website. So you can download the practice guide. So I'll put that out there as well. There's also a diagnostic survey that looks at your 5 dimensions of human flourishing and helps you identify where maybe you need to be spending more time and intentionality. And that's the one that I look at weekly because I know I'm probably, I think about it as a balance board, right? You're never completely steady. You're always just kind of, trying to keep it level. So those are available for free, but it's basically you're checking in with once you think about the 5 and one of those feels a bit off to you, you're saying, what are the signals my body is telling me? Is there a pattern? And what is one small thing I'm going to do today before I lay my head on the pillow to move in a slightly different direction where I'm taking back control?
I love it.
Amazing. Tell our listeners how we can find you and get a hold of your amazing materials.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. So it's dr-cynthia.com. So easy peasy, dr-cynthia.com. There's a resource tab. There's lots of free resources there. And there's even a free coaching opportunity if you want to have a coaching call and talk through. You can set up time with me and we'll do a free coaching call and get you on track.
I
That
love
is
it.
awesome. We have so enjoyed. We feel like we could talk to you for hours.
It's
Just
true.
such a wealth of knowledge, and
Really.
we appreciate you being on our podcast.
Thank you so much. And we've really enjoyed this conversation. Hopefully, we'll have some more. I got so many more questions for you.
Yeah.
Make sure you
I would love that. I
give
could
us
talk
a
to you guys for days.
I got a lot to say. I got a lot to learn with you. It's fabulous, and it is fun to see our work interlap like that. Yeah, go ahead. What were you saying?
I was just going to tell our listeners thanks for joining us again, and definitely subscribe, share, and if this message would help somebody you know, pass it along, because Dr. Cynthia can definitely help many people in this area. So we thank you, and we'll see you next week.
Blessings.